Welcome to the Geniuses of Copywriting podcast, a peek into the minds and strategies of the world's greatest copywriters, marketers, and persuasion experts. And now, here's your host, Brian Casangina.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Geniuses of Copywriting podcast. I've got with me someone who's really interesting. His name is Joel Erway. He's a guy I've been following for some time. I know you've got your own podcast about webinar marketing, Joel. So I really appreciate you coming on the call. So thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, Brian, glad to be here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really exciting because I think you've got a lot to share. Even though you're another one of those guys who I can't throw a bunch of money at you and get you to write a sales letter. You have a lot to share, which I can't wait to hear from you about copywriting. So let me tell you guys a bit about Joel if you're not up to speed on him. You're the founder of the webinar agency Experts Unleashed. It's a Sold with Webinars is the name of the podcast that I'm a huge fan of. You've got the Experts Unleashed podcast as well. You've been, since 2014, you've been helping entrepreneurs transform their passions into 6- and 7-figure expert-based businesses, which is really cool. That's really powerful. So I'm really excited to hear what you've got to share with us today. So can you tell us a bit about how you got started in this?
Yeah, great. So, my story is a little bit, excuse me, I'm trying to overcome a cold here. So if I'm coughing, I apologize. It's probably going to come over on the audio. But my background in this industry, in the whole digital marketing space starts back in 2013, 2014. Before I jumped into this world, I was an engineer. I had done commercial heating and cooling sales. I was a sales engineer, and so I was selling commercial heating and cooling equipment to hospitals, schools, commercial office buildings, you name it. And so I take an analytical and engineering approach to kind of sales and marketing. It's just kind of this unique way that I got brought up. I mean, I didn't go to school for sales and marketing. I went to school for mechanical engineering. Mm-hmm. And in 2014, I decided, after reading Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, which I'm sure like 95% of the people in the entrepreneurship space has read that book. Sure. But I had read his book probably in 2013, 2014, and started to explore this world of virtual assistants and, making money online, side hustle, the whole 9 yards. And so I had really gotten hooked on that idea. I had my first venture into business was to write an ebook. I thought, I'm going to publish a book. Tim Ferriss published a book. Ramit Sethi published a book. A bunch of other guys that I followed, they all published a book. I read their books, and that's how they made their big break. So I did. I published a book in the engineering space. It was in the engineering test prep space. It doesn't get more niche than that. It was actually a very successful book. I mean, by all things considered, I wouldn't say it's successful monetary wise, but to this day, still makes me about $50 a month, which is pretty interesting.
Passive income.
It's true passive income. Like, I don't think I have anything even to this day that's more passive income than that. Yeah. And so, anyway, I wrote this book. I launched it, just a Kindle book, not even a hardcover or not even paperback. Launched it, and honestly, it did way better than I expected. But I couldn't make a living off of it. I mean, in its heyday, I might have been making $100 a month. So anyway, I'm like, okay, well, I need to learn digital marketing. I need to figure out how to sell this book. So I had been following a few people online, and all of a sudden I get this ad from Russell Brunson back in either late 2013 or late 2014. And I had never heard of him before. Literally, my first exposure to him was this ad that he was offering to coach people on digital marketing. I'm like, okay, let's check it out. So check it out, apply for a call, talk to a salesperson, end up hiring, joining his coaching program. This was right when he launched ClickFunnels, like the same month that he launched ClickFunnels.
So it's like before the books and everything, before the free plus shipping books.
I think he had his 108 split test book.
Oh, that one.
But I think that was
like the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. .com Secrets didn't come out. Expert Secrets wasn't out. Anyway, so joined his coaching program and started to learn digital marketing. the thing that Russell was telling everyone to do at the time, which he's still telling everyone to do, to my knowledge, is webinars. He's like, okay, and I joined his coaching program because I said, okay, well, I've got this book, but I need to sell something a little bit more expensive because I can't make money off of a $9 book. I can't make as much money as I thought off a $9 book. So I'm like, I'm going to launch a course for a few $100. So Russell's like, okay, cool. That's a good idea. You should launch a webinar, like sell it via webinar, run paid traffic, sell it via webinar. So I'm like, okay. So, I learned his webinar style, and I'm like, I get this because I've been doing sales presentations already for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So my learning curve wasn't that steep. So started doing webinars, and I was actually like really, really close to like having a very successful offer. If I had known back then what I know now, I would have kept with it. I mean, I was
That's
basically
the story of my life too.
yeah. I mean, I was basically break even on my first venture. I mean, like I was running these webinars weekly, making some sales here and there, breaking even on paid traffic, maybe even making some money here and there. But, it wasn't like putting profit in my pocket. So I ended up running out of cash for ad spend, and I'm like, crap, well, what do I do now? So I called up Russell, and I'm like, hey man, like I'm out of cash for ad spend. I love your coaching program, but I need to make some money. So can I sell your program for you? Can I do phone sales for you? I know you're still trying to fill up your leads, but can I run phone sales for you? And he's like, I don't have any openings right now, but connect with this other guy in our coaching program who is looking for a phone salesperson. Maybe something will happen there. He introduces me to a guy named Jason who was running a weekly live webinar. Russell literally told everybody in the coaching program to be running webinars, which is very relevant in just a few minutes. I'll explain, but hook up with Jason, and Jason's like, yeah, I'm selling $1,000 program, doing a weekly live webinar like Russell says, but I've got a whole list of leads and their phone numbers. Follow up with them and try and close the deals of people who don't buy. I'm like, all right. He says, watch my webinar, and then you can go follow up the leads. So I watched the webinar. I'm like, dude, how well is this converting? And he's like, it's basically break even. I'm making like maybe 1 or 2 sales a week, sometimes none, sometimes 2. So it's on average about 1 sale a week. I'm spending about $1,000 a week in paid traffic. We're basically break even. So I said, okay, well, and I didn't tell him this. I don't have any experience in phone sales. I was just hustling to make some money. So I told him, hey, give me a shot at your webinar. Like, let me revise your webinar for you. Let me pitch it on your behalf live. And then I'll go follow up with all the phone leads. He's like, all right, great. Cause I hate doing webinars. So I'm only doing it because Russell told me to do it. So 2 weeks go by. I pitch his webinar after I revised it. And that first week that I pitched it, we did 14 sales versus his 1 that he was doing per week. So he made $14,000 that first week of me pitching his live webinar, and he went bonkers. He went ape shit. I saw a huge opportunity with shifting my focus because I'm in a group where everybody's doing webinars. 98% of them are struggling. I'm like, all right, well, here's a little honeypot for me to kind of siphon off of and add value. So that was really kind of the launch of the webinar agency was that little, I don't want to say little journey, but it was that entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, it's always struggles like that where our biggest successes come from, I think, because we really learn something when all that shit goes down. That's when we have to do what it takes to get somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's usually never straightforward. It's usually never like what you planned on doing. I never envisioned that I was going to be the webinar guy. I was going to be this guy who builds and launches webinars for clients. But, that was what was getting me success. That's what I started to make a name for in the space. And the rest is history.
It is. And I remember it was, what's it now? It's 2020 now. So like 4 years ago, I was working at Mindvalley as a senior copywriter. And then then I took over the leadership of the team at Mindvalley, where we did all the evergreen funnels that run traffic. And a huge part of Mindvalley, even more so now, is webinars. As you've probably seen, they spend, well, let's say it's a lot of money per month on driving traffic to the webinars. That's their main customer acquisition portal. So back then, the reason I'm telling you this is because I went out looking for webinar information because, I wanted to really turn around the performance of these things. And I found your podcast, and I got a lot of really useful information out of that over the years. This is how I got to know you as a webinar guy as well. So tell us more about the kind of work that you actually do with webinars and where the persuasion element really comes into it. Because I know you do a lot of the scripts and strategies for the webinars as well.
Yep. So there's a really, really big strategic component with this. More and more these days, it depends on the client, right? Depends on how advanced the client is, how mature the client is with their business. Just naturally the largest market in any market is going to be the newbie, the beginner market, right? So we get a lot of people who are just starting out, just trying to launch their own program, just trying to launch their own course, whatever it is. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I started to see a new opportunity develop inside of this space. So as we honed our craft, as we started getting better results and started getting more consistent results, obviously the demand for our services went up, and we were able to raise our prices. And with that, we had to we started having to push more clients away that, were not able to afford our services. Most of those people were in the beginner markets. And so I saw this opportunity start to come up where it's like, okay, not everybody should be going straight to a webinar, like to start. Like if you haven't validated your offer, a webinar is probably the most difficult avenue to try and validate an unproven offer. It's a lot of work to create a webinar. There's a lot of content that you have to talk about inside of your webinar, and every piece of content can either attract or repel your audience. And you really have no way of, there are ways of figuring out like how to do it, but there are much easier ways to validate an offer than a long form direct selling webinar, whether it be live or whether it be automated. Yeah. And so about 3 years ago, I started to see this trend, and I started to brainstorm different ideas of, okay, how can we serve this market, and how can we help those people who are not yet ready for a webinar to help them scale? Because that's really where I view a webinar. A webinar is a mass market tool that can really help somebody scale once you've got your messaging, once you've got your offers dialed in. So what can I do to, how can I create a step before that to help people validate their offers? And so we ultimately developed this thing called a mini webinar, where it's the premise of the mini webinar is the same as a long form webinar. So you still do some teaching, you have strategic pieces of content, but the number one thing that we are doing is we are validating the offer right away. And when I say right away, I mean within the first 5 to 10 seconds of our mini webinar. Now, the mini webinar is also automated. It's short form. It's not scheduled, so it's really just a video. But like the content inside of the mini webinar follows a very similar framework to the content that we do inside of a long form webinar. It's just trimmed down to speak to the type of buyer who values their time more than they value their money. So this does a couple of really cool things. This opened up a lot of doors for us, and it started to shift the perception of the industry. So my belief, and I had this belief, but I could never conceptualize it. I could never explain it until I saw this article from Elon Musk and Tesla. So he talks about, this was back in 2016. This is the summer of 2016 when I saw this post, but Elon had just released his 10-year, he was coming up on his 10-year anniversary of launching Tesla. And he said, our 10-year plan is coming to fruition. And I just wanted to kind of share with you what it was, so you can see, how far we've come. And he said, phase one was we launched a very exclusive, high-priced car to, the smallest market possible. And we do that because, necessarily expensive, right? And it's the Roadster. It was over $100,000 to launch that, to buy that car. They did that so they could get cash flow coming in. It's going to be their most profitable car, and they're going to use that to then reinvest those profits down into their more mass marketable cars. So the first launch was the Tesla, highest tiered version. The second car was the first launch was the Roadster. The second one was whatever. It was probably an $80,000 car. I can't remember. I don't have a Tesla, so I don't know the exact models. But then it went down to like the Model S and the Model 3. But the idea was they used a dissension model to build out their value ladder. And so many people in the course creation space do the exact opposite because they follow the teachings of exactly what I was doing. You know, when I first launched, I thought I needed to create a book, then upsell, upsell, upsell. And most of us are in bootstrap mode. We're in startup mode where we don't have endless funds to make this work. And so when I was thinking about whatever I could do with this first phase, you know, like I knew that we needed to teach people how to create a high ticket version of their course. So they were coming to me saying, Joel, Russell says you're the webinar guy. I've seen testimonials from him all over the internet talking about how great you are. I read about you in Expert Secrets. He wrote about you in Expert Secrets. You know, he tells me that I need to do a webinar. So you're the webinar guy. Help me out. So I started to teach these people how to take and they would all come to me with an idea for either a $500 course or a $997 course. It's like the golden rule. Like, okay, Russell has a $997 course. I need to have a $997 course. So I said, okay, well, you haven't most of these people hadn't validated their offer. So I said, what is, if I could help you turn that $997 course into a $5,000 or a $10,000 program, like, would you be interested? And immediately, like, their eyes are like, yeah, I'd be interested, but I have no idea how you can help me do that. Like, that's crazy. And I said, okay, don't worry about the how right now, but, here's why you need to start with a high ticket offer first, cash flow, the whole 9 yards. And so I explained this whole thing that I just talked about, the dissension model versus the ascension model. And people really started to grasp that concept. And this is when we started to develop the mini webinar. And the whole idea is people who buy high ticket programs, high ticket offers, $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000 offers from cold traffic, they value one thing more than anything else, right? They value their time over their money. The people who are going to buy, the vast majority of the people who are going to buy your lower ticket stuff are people who value their money over their time, meaning they're willing to sacrifice more time to learn about the product, to watch a long form webinar, to do their research on if this opportunity is right for them, because they have more time than they do have money. Now, this is painting a very broad brush. There's obviously going to be some exceptions, but
it's a different kind of customer, isn't it?
It's a different kind of customer, exactly. And so we started to launch these mini webinars, short 8 to 12 minute, video presentations to speak to that person who values their time. So they're not going to sit through a long webinar. You want to give me the need to know information, make me the offer. If I'm interested, let's hop on a call and let's take the next steps. It's completely changed the game for us. We have launched dozens of offers and students and clients and our own programs to 30, 50, 100, 250, like upwards over $1 million a month. I had one client who went from zero to $1 million a month in like 4 or 5 months. It was just ridiculous with the mini webinar. And so basically what we do now, like our customer journey is phase 1. If they haven't validated their offer, we start with a mini webinar and we launch a high ticket version of their course. And we get them to at least $50,000 per month. Once they hit $50,000 per month, now they have the green light to then reinvest their profits into an automated marketing system, usually an automated webinar, to sell their product and service. And so that's kind of the flow and the timeline of how we do this kind of 1-2 punch of mini webinars and direct selling webinars. And the other side, the other major benefit of that is when we launch the automated webinar on the back end, after they've validated with a mini webinar, we have all the data. We have all the marketing intel. We have all the content that we know that they're responding to. So creating that long form webinar is a lot less risky, a lot easier, and it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and there's so many interesting things to sort of unpack from that whole thing that it's like the complete opposite of what everyone is teaching. Like, everyone wants to have the free sign up and then the $7 tripwire and go up from there.
Yeah.
One of the most recent episodes that I recorded as we record this was with Brian Kurtz from Boardroom, and he said something really interesting that the Boardroom did $1 billion in sales, $39 at a time. So which he was saying, you kind of did it the hard way, but it's much better if you could do that $10,000 at a time.
Well, there are, so that episode with Brian was a great episode. And the thing with, the thing with Brian was that he had access to lists, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I think he still had to pay for them. It still cost him money, but he had access to targeted lists. I mean, in this day and age with social media advertising and Facebook and Instagram and, YouTube, those are the three primary advertising channels for most information marketers these days. We don't have, the lists are all on those channels, and we can get laser targeted where we don't have to risk a huge budget to test these ideas and to test these concepts. I mean, we launch these things called power offers, which will tell us right away, okay, is this message working or is it not? I mean, and it's like, we're making the offer straight in the ad. So that's the first thing that I want people to validate. I want them to validate their offers because that's what's going to tell them if they're going to pay them money or not. And so, it's amazing that just the times have changed so much since when, back in the old school days, and they still work. Those methods still do work. And it's just a completely different model. It's a completely different business model. And, I love the high ticket model. I mean, the high ticket, I should say, I love the dissension model. I love the dissension model more than I love the high ticket model. I mean, it's just, working it out in phases is in the right phases. It's a world of difference.
Yeah. Having that different type of customer that comes along with the higher ticket prices is all important, because if this is one reason why, and I was inspired by Matt Basic to have my own email list is only buys. You have to buy something from me to get on my email list. So and that was something he talked about in his episode as well. But so I figure that that's better than a free lead because they've spent some money. So many people are offering high ticket courses and products at the moment, but they don't have this system figured out, which you so brilliantly figured out with the mini webinar. Yep. That's what I think is really amazing.
It's funny too. I wanted to put my money where, I was out there not bashing the low ticket model, but basically saying that I thought there was a better way, and I wanted to make sure that if I was going to be making those claims, I could justify it with actual data that I had tested. And so I had run a test last year on a low ticket model where I was trying to ascend people into my back end high ticket offers. Now, the big caveat is, okay, could I have improved some ascension sequences? Yes, absolutely. Could I have improved some things within the funnel? Absolutely. But the fact of the matter is we spent $30,000 testing this with paid traffic. We had a front-end conversion system that was a little less than break even, but it was a $21 front-end offer. We had a $37 order bump. We had a $297 upsell after that. And then we had a $497 upsell after that.
Yeah, very typical and this was after model.
Yeah, typical ascension model. And I got to tell you, man, first of all, we were just less than break even, and which I was fine with. I mean, for running that test, I was totally fine with it. I'm like, great. Well, now I've got a list of buyers. I've got a list of people who have bought something from me. We're going to have a bunch of people that ascend into coaching or ascend into consulting or ascend into done for you. The exact opposite happened. So maybe strategically what I was doing was way off, but we had not one person ascend into a back-end offer, not one. So I just want to put my full transparency out there. I'm sure I was doing something wrong, but I was like, the funnel converted. So the ascension sequence converted. But I mean, we didn't have a single person ascend. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, not one.
Yeah, that's weird because, when experts teach us about the ascension model, they say, a certain percentage, your hyper responses will buy everything you've got and they'll keep ascending. But that's often just an assumption if you haven't proven your offer and business model.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's definitely an assumption, and not many people have that much money to spend on a test like that. What's interesting is, like, we got a lot of, like, our customer support went through the roof, meaning, like, our customer support requests went through the roof, because there's technical issues with delivering the content. Also, like, it became, I don't want to say a nightmare because that's probably over exaggerating, but, like, it was a huge headache for not making any money and not ascending a single person. Like, we would have people email us saying, like, they were literally spending their last $21 with me. I'm like, don't buy it. Like, this is not going, like, this is not a cure-all to writing you a blank check. But, like, they would literally email us saying, like, is this going to work for me? This is literally my last $21. I'm like, oh God. Like, and we just didn't get that with, like, going from the top down. But going from the bottom up, I mean, you attract the people who are interested in $21 offers. I mean, like I said, guys, there are guys out there who have mastered that funnel, and I can guarantee you, I had something that was strategically off, but that's a big test. It took us months to build that out and test it. Like, we had multiple upsells that we were testing. We had multiple variations. Like, that wasn't our first version. It was probably our 7th where we finally got it to, like, break even. That's
the case with a lot of people. They don't tell you about the other 6 versions. They just tell you about the final one that works to an extent. So, but what I was going to say is, no one comes along and is going to email you and say, "This is my last $10,000. Will this work?"
Yeah, I mean, you'll get people who are skeptical, like, when they're in the buying process, and if somebody is telling you, like, the beauty is, because when we first launched when we launched mini webinars, like, we're running consultation calls. So if there are any indicators that, like, they're spending their last dime with me, like, I will not take them on as clients. So, like, I have that ability to reject them because they're going to be a nightmare. So there's that, but that doesn't happen all that often.
It reminds me of something that Justin Brooke used to talk about. I think this is back when I was still writing the Daily Edge. I think he posted about this too. He said that people don't go along and watch a webinar and say to themselves, "Oh, this is a webinar. That means I'm not spending over $500." Or this is a VSL, therefore I'm not going to spend over $900. If it's $998, I'm not buying.
Yep.
They don't say that. It's about the value, the value exchange that you provide.
Yeah, it's value exchange. It's, there's no hard limit. I mean, I would say there's always exceptions. We see the vast, like, if you're running to cold traffic to an automated webinar, usually the barrier of, like, the maximum break even point that you're, like, the maximum, like, price of elasticity in your profit margin is, I haven't really seen any cold traffic automated webinar funnels work that are over $2,000, right? That's kind of the rule of thumb. We're running one right now, which is $1,250, and it's paid in full, no payment plans. That's working extremely well for us, well for us for high ticket courses. So that tells us that, yes, I could probably raise the price and we'd still be fine. But, like, right now our numbers are great at that price point. So I'm just going to keep running that and optimizing other elements. Yeah.
The thing that I find a lot of people gets held up on, and of course this is what I'm thinking to an extent as well, is about finding that $10,000 sale or whatever as the first sale. We've been indoctrinated into the ascension model. So why is someone going to come on who doesn't know us and suddenly watches the webinar and suddenly they're spending 10 grand with it? Is it just that value, or is there certain techniques to do that, strategies, or is this just a block that I have that I think that people aren't going to spend 10 grand with their first transaction?
Can you say that again? What was the question?
Are there certain techniques or strategies and tactics that you use in these mini webinars? Is there special things that you do, or do I just have an assumption that people won't spend 10 grand the first time with me?
Yeah, and so like the general theme of what we do with the mini webinars is what, like, we want them to be 10 to 12 minutes long, right?
Yeah.
Some of our clients, they're a little wordy, they have a hard time slicing content out, which is fine. So they might be 20 or 25 minutes long. But like the number one thing that we want to make sure and this all comes from a book that I read by one of Bob Bly's books, How to Create an Irresistible Offer. So he had this chart that talked about the cost to acquire a customer depending on your marketing piece, and it was basically four scenarios, and it was balancing whether it was primarily offer driven or primarily brand driven, right? The more offer driven it was, the lower your cost per customer. The more brand driven the content was, meaning like very few calls to action, more educating, the higher the cost per acquisition was. And so when I read that a few years ago, like the light bulb went off. It's like, shit, like we just need to be making offers. Like, if we have a high cost per acquisition, like we need to be making offers. Like just make the damn offer. It's kind of something that I've been coining over the course of the past 3 years. So with the mini webinars and with, pairing it with our power offer ads, like the whole thing that we do is we reverse the sales and marketing thing. We reverse the sales and marketing relationship. Everyone thinks you have to market first and then make an offer. I go the exact opposite. Excuse me, my voice is killing me right now.
That's fine.
I go the exact opposite, meaning like it's kind of like what Matt Bazek told you. It's like, I only want buyers on my list. It's like, okay, well, I don't really want to sell them. I want to find a better way to do that. I subscribe to the exact same methodology, but like, how can I do it without having to actually collect their credit card? And the way that I do it is the first thing that they see from me, the first thing that any new audience sees from me, I want them to see an offer, meaning a promise, right? It's not necessarily like, okay, hey, here, buy something from me. It's, I want to do X, Y, and Z for you. And the framework that I put in my power offer is attention, my ideal customer, right? If I offered to insert major promise, major benefit without the obstacle, would you take me up on that offer? That's what I call a 1 to 2 sentence power offer.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a quick example. Like one of the first ones that I launched, which just kind of opened up the floodgates to a massive set of leads for me, was, if I offered, attention course creators, if I offered to build you a webinar in the next 24 hours, guaranteed to convert, without you having to worry about what to say, or without you having to worry about, structuring the content, would you take me up on that offer? And I launched that as an ad, and our lead flow went through the roof, right? I'm making an offer. I'm not asking them for their credit card, but I'm making them a promise and making them an offer. I do the exact same thing. Like once they click on that link from that ad, and this can be an email, this can be a social media post, this doesn't have to be paid traffic. Whenever they respond to that call to action, the first thing that they're going to see is they're going to see a mini webinar, which is a little bit more information about what I'm talking about here. Now, the very first thing that I do inside the mini webinar is I repeat the offer. It's the same. The same framework. I want them to see offer first. And if they're not bought in on the offer, that's totally fine. I want them to go away. But if they are interested in the offer, then I give them some marketing pieces. Then I give them some supplemental information to tell them a little bit more about me, build my authority, build my credibility. I'm not trying to rewrite the rules of sales and marketing. I'm just trying to put them in a more effective order for people who are out there bootstrapping it to people who are out there, wanting to do this on their own. And so we do sales first and then marketing. Lead with the offer, then supplement with marketing. And there's a lot of stuff that we can cut out from long form presentations. The people who value their time more than their money, they just want the need to know. They want to know what your methodology is. They want to know what your mechanism is, and they want to know what your promise is. And that's and a little bit about your authority. Like, and when I say a little bit, like, they really don't care much about you, like, at all.
Yeah, they care about themselves and what you can do for them. Yeah. So that's really interesting. And what you're talking about there really takes me back to those old door knocking and cold calling sales days, which I've done as well, where we would qualify the prospect straight out of the blocks, because you don't want to stand on somebody's doorstep for 10 minutes if they're not going to be interested in whatever you're selling. So that's what you just described there. It's a great way to pre-frame everything in a way that you selling them something becomes 100% inevitable, and it makes perfect sense, because you wouldn't start off that way and then not try and sell them something. So if they're open to that, it's pre-framing the whole thing, where I think sometimes that we try the marketing and before we get to the sale, because we're sometimes afraid of turning them off by making that offer too early. But the way you're doing it is the complete opposite. You're making that offer early, so the ones who do stick around are the ones who are open to it.
Yep. And we have had just so many people are out there, and they think, like, if they've never launched a high ticket offer before, meaning $3,000, $5,000, or $10,000. Number one, they don't believe that you can launch it to cold traffic. They don't believe cold traffic they're gonna buy it, and we have debunked that over and over and over again. We had one client who he was the picture perfect scenario of exactly what I described earlier. He came to me, said, "Joel, you're the webinar guy. I have an idea for a $500 course. Help me sell it." I had to reshape his whole way of thinking. He's like, "Okay, cool." I offered to, I saw that we could design a $10,000 program for him. He's like, "All right, I trust you. Let's do it." The very first lead that came into his pipeline, like our funnel goes opt in, like, just give me your name and email, watch the mini webinar, and apply. That very first person who gave their name and email signed up for a $10,000 program. Wow. Very first person. He spent less than $1 or less than $2 on ads.
That's a hell of an ROI.
It was nuts. It was nuts. We had another client who was in the gym space, and the first day that he launched his ads, he sold a $10,000 program. I can't say it was his first lead. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was the first day he sold a $10,000 program. Because he had never. This is a brand new offer, right? It's a new audience. So, I mean, just time and time and time again, the thing is, if you have a promise that is good enough and it's relevant, like, people are going to want it, and they're going to want to know, like, people value, like, the one thing that people value over anything, like, more than money, is they value speed. So if you want to create a sexy offer, design it around speed. And I guarantee you, people will pay big money to just get something done faster, to get a result faster. It doesn't even matter what the result is. Frame your offer, your high ticket offer, around speed, and you will get people raising their hand left and right.
Yeah, that's an amazing distinction, and let me write that down, because I don't want to forget this. Even though I do the transcripts of these and all the reviews and everything, but that's a write it downer. Although there's been several of them so far. The core thing that you keep coming back to, which I'm really noticing resonates with me, is about the thinking. We think that we need to start off with a $7 tripwire. We think that we can't do all these things. So that's the whole theme. Is that the core of it? Just fixing your mindset?
It's fixing your mindset. Yes. When I reach out to people who are now watching our long form webinar, right? Because we're in scale mode. We launched our own mini webinar for this offer long time ago. Does very well. We still use it. It's in our funnel. Right now, we are not driving paid traffic to it because we've crossed that $50,000 per month mark with this offer. So now we're in scale mode with the automated webinar version, the productized version. So I reach out to leads every day who opt into my long form webinar, just asking them what they thought about the training. The number one thing that I get back is that the number one comment that I get back is, Joel, you've opened my eyes to this whole idea of descension versus ascension. I was trying to, blog and create content every day and all this other stuff, which wasn't producing results. But, if I want to get to 30 or 50K per month, I need to switch my focus and go high ticket first and then descend down. That's the biggest aha moment that I get from people who are watching the training and who are just coming into my world. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I managed to get you on the show because it's opened my eyes to this sort of thing as well. Because I've long been a student of the ascension model. I've used that pretty well in numerous industries. But I'm going to go away from this and do my own. Yeah.
Well, so I want to make a key point here. I don't want to trash the ascension model.
Of course,
Ascension works. The ascension model does work. It just needs, for the vast majority of us who, don't have startup funding, who are bootstrapping it, we have to do it backwards. Meaning, I want you to still do an ascension model, but build it backwards, build it from the top down. Like, eventually, when you have a complete product suite, an ascension suite, like, now you have a real business. Like, you have a legitimate business and you can ascend people. Like, I've built my ascension sequence. I have people who join my course and then they upgrade to the agency or they upgrade to consulting. Like, it works exactly as designed for the ascension, but build it backwards. So I want to make that clear distinction. Like, I'm objecting to the way that we are launching our products and services, our programs and services. Launching with ascension is the wrong way. We need to launch with descension and then build our product suite out that way. So I just want to make that distinction very, very clear.
Yeah. Appreciate that. That's very valid as well. So now the ways that people can learn more about this and about you, the podcast is how I initially found you. So it's sold with webinars. So that's actually one of my favorite podcasts. So second only to Geniuses of Copywriting, but sold with webinars is a pretty good one as well. Now, did you have another podcast?
I do. It's currently called Experts Unleashed, but it's going to be going through a rebrand. I don't know what it's going to be called. It's going to be some form of my personal brand. So probably the Joel Show or the Joel Erway Show, whatever it is. But right now you can find it as Experts Unleashed, and I can't even give you a time frame of when it will be rebranded. But for the time being, it is called Experts Unleashed. Yes.
Yeah. What about people who are smart enough to want you to help them with their webinars?
Yeah, the best way to go about that is head over to newwaytolaunch.com. So everything I've been talking about here is like how to launch your programs. And I'm trying to teach people that there's a new way to launch their programs and their products and services. So if you go to newwaytolaunch.com, you'll see my own mini webinar. You can, learn more about my whole process. I give you the very high level of what I call the perfect expert model and everything we just talked about here. Check it out. Check out the testimonials. You can also go to thewebinaragency.com if you want to learn more about my company, learn more about what we've done for other clients. So those are the two resources that people can go to check me out.
Awesome,
and
man.
Of course, probably the best spot is to check out my podcast. So Sold with Webinars. You can find that on thewebinaragency.com and Experts Unleashed or whatever it's going to be called in the future. But,
I'm a big fan of Sold with Webinars and the stuff that you're doing with webinars. So I strongly recommend everyone subscribe to that podcast and then get you to work on their webinars as well. So thanks for coming along. I'll let you go now. You are a genius of copywriting. Thanks for sharing all of that stuff. It's really been eye-opening for me as well. So we'll have to do this again sometime.
Cool. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Joel.
Thank you for listening to Geniuses of Copywriting with Brian Casangina. To get the full transcript and all the resources mentioned on today's show, go to www.geniusesofcopywriting.com now.